Hi, my name is Mariam Elsamny. I work for Dunia Finance. Dunia Finance is a startup company in the UAE, in Dubai, UAE. Okay, so it's a joint venture between Temasek Holdings and Mubadala, which is the government of Abu Dhabi. When I joined, I'm the chief marketing officer, but I also handle the leadership, talent development and recruitment for the company. And when I joined, being a startup, I had joined from Citibank after being in Citibank for 9 years. And before that, I was with Procter & Gamble. In both of these companies, we had no issue in, people approaching us all the time wanting a job because two, strong brands and so forth. Dunia was a startup. Nobody ever heard the name. Nobody ever heard the company. In our part of the world, nobody knows who Fullerton or Temasek are. So irrelevant names in that part of the world. So we had a big challenge, and we had a couple of schools at that time who knew us and had faith, at least in the management team, and knew that they would be sending their students to a very good company to work with. One of them SMU, SPGen. And those were the schools that we were dealing with. Today, I think we've created a very successful platform for recruiting young talent. We have a large intake of MBA students from across the globe, from the US, from Asia and so forth. And we see diversity, we see different types of students and so forth. So, when Stephen asked me to be on this panel, I sort of put together 9 points, and I agree with both of what my partners here said. Things that mainly from the student perspective and from the faculty and what we expect to see more out of. And I don't want to label it to just Asian schools. I think this is something that we see. It happens more or less of in different schools, and I can see the difference between a graduate from SMU or a graduate from IIM, Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad, or from Tufts. I can clearly see the differences, but each one of them has their pros and cons. My first point is really that I think what we see is MBAs really need to focus on teaching skills of the future. Everything is changing. Technology is changing, social media, networks, everything is being built super fast. And what we see in some MBAs is that they're still sort of stuck on, theories of the past. They're not really equipping students with, skills of the future. My second point is, because the world is changing so fast, and I think Alok, you mentioned this, students really need to be adaptable to change. They need to be able to learn these skills. They need to be equipped with, we need to see innovation, passion, creativity, ability to take that next step, and ability to deal with different cultures, different scenes, different scenarios, different issues, and so forth. That I don't see a lot of happening. I see a lot of people, and leading on to my third point, and similar to what Alok says, I have 3 levels of skills that I see, similar to his 3 levels of leadership. Technical, I call them technical, human, and conceptual. We see schools producing very strong students with technical skills, no doubt. They can do formulas in their head, and they can do, they know Porter's model, and they're very smart theoretically speaking. But the human and the conceptual skills is where we have a lag. And I think for a school to be ranked as a top-tier school is one that can sort of promote or show that students have this capability or ability to sort of manage change. Which leads me to my next point. It's really all about a student being able to frame the problem. Solutions exist. So technology exists, solutions exist, and so forth. Even in our own company, when you look, there's a lot of smart people there, but who is really looking through that, meddling through that mess and day-to-day, clutter and framing the issue, okay? That's really the crux of it, being able to identify opportunities, being able to frame your problem, and then the solutions will exist somehow, somewhere. Again, my next point is back to those 3 skills. The most important, I believe, all of them are important, but the most one which we don't see enough of is the conceptual skills. Students from MBA schools, again, super smart, but then when it comes to basics or being able to conceptualize something, and that's what you need in an organization. I think because we were a startup company, okay, now we're 6 years in business and a highly successful one, but we had a lot more, let's say, innovation, entrepreneurship. I mean, and we were looking for that skill amongst our students, and we just weren't getting it. I would get students from top schools and super smart, but they're not able to conceptualize the problem, conceptualize the issue, and move forward. Okay. And what we look for in an MBA is really, what I expect to see more of is really schools arousing that curiosity amongst individuals. And really, I view the university campus or the university thing as an incubation site. And when I say incubation, I don't mean just startups. Incubation of ideas, of thoughts, of so forth. Ability to make these students focus on, you know, the world's pressing needs of today, whether it's social enterprise, health, environment, poverty, micro-enterprise. How do you make students curious enough and to take action and to move forward? And, you know, do they have access to simulation labs? And. It just doesn't stop, right? My next point is about globality. Now, we're sitting in Singapore today. Look at what Singapore has achieved. Similar to what UAE has done for Dubai, right? Singapore is really a global hub. You know, the leadership had a vision. They had a vision to make it the, you know, it's a city that, it's a small island in the middle of Asia, which has now managed to attract the best talent in the world. We have, I don't know, you're British? I'm Egyptian. Indian, and American, all sitting in Singapore, right? And I'm sure lots more nationalities working out there and being here. So it's managed to attract the best talent. Yes, hopefully we're the best talent. It's managed to attract the best talent in the world, but it's created the platforms and synergies for people to want to come here. It's created that, you know, attraction. We expect MBA schools to do the same. So an MBA school, it's not, I mean, diversity doesn't just come through nationality. It's diversity in knowledge, in skills, in programs, and so forth. So just because a school is in Asia or in India and so forth, they need to factor this and keep this in mind. It's more about keeping or establishing that kind of global platform. Okay, point number 7. I think faculty are really the link between the company and the student. Now, I don't mean they're the link to get them a job, but I think they're the link. Faculty need to engage more and more with corporates to understand their needs, to understand trends. Everything has changed. Today, marketing and branding and advertising is no longer about placing an ad in the paper or doing a radio ad or whatever, right? There's social media, there's networks. If you look, I mean, look at distribution channels. You now have things like Uber, like Airbnb, right? So platforms have been created, networks have been created. And I think faculty, no offense to anyone, but what we see sometimes is that, you know, they're still teaching, again, Porter's 5 forces or Porter's model, which is great. They need to understand that, but then they need to also understand that it's evolved, right? Things have evolved dramatically, and we need to open up students' minds to the same thing. Even valuation models, okay? You've got your standard valuation models, but today, a company that's not making money is worth billions, right? Look at Flipkart in India, or look at what's come of Alibaba, right? It's valued at billions, but one day it started as being a startup and so forth. This is just a few years back. It's not a 100-year company. So today, what some companies have built in a few months or in a few years would have taken companies of the past 100 years to build in terms of distribution, in terms of brand value, in terms of a lot of things. And I think that's what faculty really need to keep in mind when designing programs and so forth. My next point is really, we expect to see MBA schools develop more insurgents versus incumbents. We want to see the student is really the end product. I want to see students who are job creators, not job seekers. I don't mean everybody has to be an entrepreneur. I don't mean everybody has to go out there and start up their own business, but I mean people who have got that mindset to create things. And again, we don't see enough of that really happening. Back to my point about technical skills are really the hygiene factor. We don't doubt that if a student has gone to XYZ university, he's got strong foundation, but we want to see more of that conceptualization, ability to create, an ability to expand. Finally, my ninth point, if I may conclude, the student is the end product, and we should never forget that. I think the faculty are really the nectar that attracts students to come to university. I think, Professor, you were just saying your daughter went to Chicago because she wanted to be taught by Nobel laureates in University of Chicago. I also went to University of Chicago, but I only met one laureate, and I'm not sure he's the one who's made a difference to my life, right? He was great, but faculty are what attract students to a campus. And finally, the school is really, if I may call it, the playing field or the playing ground, and they need to build in, have access, give students access to those incubation labs, simulations. Practical experience is key. I think, Alok, you touched upon this, and I think this is fundamental. Students come out with great theory, but the practical aspect is missing, and I think the school needs to provide that environment. I think those are my points.